Hello, welcome to Live with Anton Gunn. It is Wednesday, 2 p.m. East Coast time, 11 a.m. Pacific, Central Time Zone, Mountain Time Zone. It's time to get in where you fit in. And you can probably tell by the sound of my voice and the background, I am not in my home office. I'm actually on the road traveling. And today I'm actually in Baltimore, Maryland, heading back to South Carolina very shortly, but I wanted to make sure I get this live done as soon as possible. And so I'm doing it from my hotel before I head out. And what I want to talk about today is something really important. Before I get into the details of the strategies and the keys and the thoughts that I want to share today, I just want to ask you a few questions. Are you watching the news? Are you seeing all of the global things happening, or what I would like to call geopolitical things happening? So, whether it's what's going on in Israel and Palestine, what's going on the Gaza Strip, what's going on in Ukraine, what's happening in China. Do you know what's going on in Argentina right now? Or how about Brazil? Are you paying attention to what is happening in places like Haiti or even in Europe? My question for you today: do you have a global mindset? Do you have a mindset to actually pay attention to what is going on in this world that could be impacting the place where you work right now? Now, I know as a United States person, that's who I am, a citizen of the United States, and most of my people who are watching this are citizens of the United States. But most of us are centric to the United States. We think the world actually revolves around the United States of America. And the United States of America has a significant influence on world events and a significant influence on so many things. But my challenge for you today, that if you want to be a leader of consequence, if you want to be a leader of excellence, you have to have a global perspective about what it means to lead. You have to understand the nuances of what it takes to be a global leader of excellence. So this week's blog post is focused on global leadership excellence. So I thought it would be fitting, before I sent you to the blog post to actually read what was written about the subject, I want to talk to you about the 7 keys that you need to demonstrate global leadership excellence. I want to talk about these keys because I think they're very relevant, or relevant for everybody, but they're really relevant right now. Like, literally, with all of the things that we have going on in the world, we have so many people who have a myopic view of the world. They only see one lens, they only see it one way. And those leaders are insufficient and ineffective. And so I want to talk about global leadership today, and really what it takes to be a leader who can lead in any industry, on any continent, on any place in this earth, and be effective, whether you speak the language or not. So I want you to understand, you need to be versed in a lot of things around leadership and around culture as it relates to the globe. And I'm going to unpack those. And I know that language is probably one of them that's going to be difficult for most of us to learn. So that's why this session is important, because I'm going to give you keys that is irrespective of you actually knowing how to speak a foreign language. Okay. So let's jump right in. And I'm starting with the first key. This is the first key, the easiest key, and I kind of already hinted at it. And that is, you need to have a global mindset. See, a global mindset recognizes that every day the world gets more and more interconnected. I mean, you can think about the internet, you can think about social media, you can think about how far we can fly on planes and how quickly you can be in another country on a cross-continental flight. The world is getting smaller and smaller and being brought closer together. There used to be a time before air travel that if you were going from the United States to Europe or vice versa, it would take 3 months on a ship to go across the ocean. But now you can be from the East Coast of the United States of America into London in less than 7 hours. You can fly from New York City to Tel Aviv, Israel in less than 10 hours. And yes, you can fly from some parts of the United States of America and be in China in less than 12 hours. A global mindset is what you need. That the world is getting smaller and we can be anywhere and anybody can be here. And so an understanding of what's happening around the globe, what are the trends in the industries in other places? What are the trends in the United States? What does that mean for business? I'm telling you right now, as a leadership expert, I not only pay attention to what's going on in the United States of America inside of companies and organizations, I pay attention to what's going on in the world. I can tell you right now in Australia, where most of their healthcare organizations are run by the government, they're struggling with toxic workplace culture right now. They have physicians who are career employees who are burned out. I've worked with several Fortune 500 companies that have operations in China, operations in India, operations in Europe, operations in Southeast Asia. And so I spend my time understanding the challenges that this company is having. And I understand that there's some differences with how people lead in the United States, how those employees respond in the United States versus how they lead and respond in other places of the world. So very quickly, to stay relevant in business, I had to develop a global mindset. So I'm telling you the same thing, that you have to develop a global mindset if you want to be an impactful leader. Like, I mean, can you really converse about all of the issues that are going on in the world? Or are you just blind and living in oblivion because the only thing you're focused on is the bubble that's right in front of you? You're focused on that team that you lead and your company as it is right now. But I want you to know that your company has leaders inside of that company that are focused on what's going on around the world. Have you ever heard of the term supply chain? If you haven't heard of the term supply chain, you need to get your head out of the sand and actually pay attention, because the supply chain is a global enterprise. That when the pandemic hit us in 2020, you couldn't buy a new car because the chips for that car computer system was manufactured in China and all of the factories in China were shut down. I remember the early stage of the pandemic, nobody could get an N95 mask. You know why? Because they were all made in China. And so when China shut down, so many businesses' supply chain shut down. I purchased a house in late 2020 and early 2021, and I went to order some furniture, a new living room set. You know, they told me it would take 9 months for me to get my furniture. You know why? Because pieces of the furniture were manufactured overseas and they couldn't get them into the United States. And so I have a global mindset already, but I really can see how it's all interconnected through the supply chain. So my question for you, do you have a global mindset? If you don't have a global mindset, that is one key to be an excellent leader as it relates to this globalized world. So develop your mindset. Now, the second thing that you need to develop is you need to develop a sense of cultural intelligence. Now, when I say cultural intelligence, you can't just know that there are other countries around the world and there are things going on in those countries. You need to have some intelligence about the people, about the society, about their form of government, and what that government might mean for you and your business. Let me give you an example. So many people only see China as a communist country. They know it has a single solitary government that is communist in nature, that is focused on not social economic enterprise for all people, but is very structured and hierarchical, that the state provides benefits for the people. And so some people would simply assume that China is communist. And without cultural intelligence, you would think you're right. But I'm here to tell you that you're completely wrong, because China has a communist government, but it very much believes in economic enterprise. Communism is a part of their government structure, but capitalism is a part of what they do. Why do you think so many factories are in China? Why do you think so many United States corporations have manufacturing partners in China? Because they manufacture goods and services, they pay people wages, those wages help to grow businesses, et cetera, et cetera. So communism is a part of China, but so is capitalism. But I want to give you one more C that most people have not thought about when it comes to China, and that is Confucianism. See, China, I break China up into multiple pieces. They have a communist government, they have capitalism and enterprise going on, but they also culturally think very differently than we do in Western society. They think incredibly different. I was talking to a group of friends the other day about some of the geopolitical issues that are going on between Israel and what's going on with China, what's going on in all these other places. And I want you to understand that when it comes to China, they think in centuries, while the United States thinks in decades. I'm going to repeat that. Chinese leaders think in centuries, while most of us in the United States think in decades. That we plan 10 years out, but they're planning 100 years out. They know the decisions that they make today. They're thinking about what this is going to mean for our society 100 years from now. So I just use China as one example to say that you need to have some cultural intelligence as it relates to your business and your industry. So if you're in manufacturing, what does South America mean for you? What does Mexico mean for you? What does India mean for you if you know that 80% of the call centers in your company are based in India? Do you have a cultural context for the caste system in India? Do you have a cultural context for what's going on in their government? Who's the new elected leader? All of these things could impact your business in a significant way. So the smart people that are going to grow in business and find success in business are the ones who develop some cultural intelligence. Now, that cultural intelligence is important for the third key, and that is cultural nuances. See, cultural nuances is recognizing the small, subtle differences between places. So we know that English is the language that's spoken by a lot of countries, right? But we know Spanish is the largest language or the fastest growing language around the world. Why? Because there are 22 different countries that have Spanish as their primary language. But if you don't know Spanish, and if you don't pay attention to the nuances, you would think that all countries that speak Spanish are exactly the same. And I'm here to tell you that they're not. There are some nuances in the language. Not only are there nuances in the language, there are nuances in the culture and how people perceive themselves and see themselves in this globalized world. So if you're in Mexico, you're in Mexico. It's very different to be in the Dominican Republic or to be in Spain proper or to be in Argentina or to be in Peru or Colombia. There are a lot of nuances that are very different. And the thing that you might do that is okay to do in Mexico will not be okay to do in Argentina. And the thing that you do in the Dominican Republic may not be okay to do if you're in Cuba. So you have to understand that nuance is everything. And the smart leaders are the ones who pick up on nuances. Or more specifically, you have someone who understands those nuances on your team, in your network. I'm going to come back to that point about having different people on your team. But I want you to understand that just because a country speaks the same language as you, because the leaders share their same language, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to see the nuances that they have that are differently. Same thing could be very, very different if you don't know the nuances. So I encourage you as a leader to understand the nuances and the differences between cultures and countries and between languages and between societies, because everybody is not the same. It's really, really important for you to understand how nuances will help you. That's the third trait that I want to give you. Now, the fourth one I want to give you is a good one that I learned about many years ago. And that if you have some intelligence and you're able to pick up on the nuances, you will pick up on the need for cross-cultural communication. That sometimes just knowing the nuances is not enough. You got to know how to communicate with people. You got to focus on communication and understanding that cross-cultural communication can be a winner for you in business or it can complicate things really bad because tone matters. Terms and words matter. How you communicate that and being effective in communicating across cultures is very important. I have friends who have done business in places like Japan. And so they understand that doing business in Japan has a particular culture around it. And you have to understand what that culture is and be able to communicate in their culture. I got friends who work at Toyota high up, and they told me spending time in the United States working for Toyota versus going to Japan to work on Toyota are two different things. And you got to understand how to communicate when you're over there. A great book to read if you want to understand the importance of cross-cultural communication. Read Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. It's the autobiography of Phil Knight, the founder of Nike Corporation. And he talks about when he was going to Japan to try to sell Tiger shoes. And then when he came back to the United States and he started Nike, and his number one primary investor was a Japanese loan corporation. So you got to understand that it's important to have good cross-cultural communication when you're doing business with people so you can stay on the same page. And the best leaders do their part to be on the same page. Now, I'm giving you the context of how to do this globally, but I want you to know that people right here in the United States have different cultures. Like, I'm from the South. I've spent most of my life in the South. And here's what I will tell you. Southerners have a culture. Southerners have language that we understand. There are terms that we use that other people in other parts of the country don't use. I'll give you a couple quick examples. So when you go to the grocery store and you grab one of those shopping vehicles to put all your groceries in as you walk around the store, what do you call it? Tell me what you call it in the chat. Well, some people in the South, they call it a buggy. Others, they call it a cart. Even others will call it a basket. So it depends on where you are. You need to have some cross-cultural communication. You need to have some nuance around language and some intelligence around that. If you say buggy, some people may not know what you're talking about. Let me give you another example. Like when you take your trash out to the street for the trash truck to come by and pick it up, is it called a trash truck or is it called a garbage truck? Or is it called a sanitation truck? Those are different ways to communicate. Very subtle, but different. In the can that you pull to the street, is it a can or is it a buggy? It all depends on where you are. So I'm telling you right now, when it comes to business, when it comes to leadership, you got to understand the terms that other people will understand. And you got to understand the terms might be different than what you normally would use. So the best leaders are the ones who really get good at cross-cultural communication. Now, here's one other key that I think is important. This is really, I want to say, key number 5. Key number 5 is focus on adaptation and flexibility. Then when you're leading in a global world, when you try to be a global leader by having the intelligence, the mindset, the communication, understanding the nuances, you're going to mess up. You're going to say something wrong. You're going to do something wrong. You're going to offend somebody and you didn't mean to offend them. But the smart leaders are the ones who don't back away from the fact that you might make a mistake, but you become adaptive and flexible and willing to apologize and willing to say to the people, I'm sorry, I meant no offense. Can you teach me the better way to communicate? Can you teach me what would have been more appropriate? Can you teach me what I should be doing different? See, that's what a great leader will do and will be if they're ever in a position where they're trying to communicate, they're trying to be a global leader, they're trying to lead with excellence, they're going to make a mistake. So when you make those mistakes, you need to be adaptive, and you need to be flexible. That adaptation is a key to the leaders who grow. You want to grow as a leader. So growing means adapting, improvising, overcoming whatever that adversity is. You got to be that person, be that leader. Now, the next trait, this is number 6. I want to give you number 6 is you want to embrace inclusion. You want to embrace inclusion. And what do I mean inclusion? You want to diversify your team and you want to include them in the strategy and the conversation that you're building for your organization. See, it's one thing to be culturally intelligent and to be aware of the nuances, to have a global mindset, but think you need to hire diverse people as employees, but don't need to have diverse people in leadership roles. That's a foolish approach to this work. So you need to understand that you don't have your best thinking when it's people just like you sitting around the table. So you need to embrace diverse people and include them in leadership roles. Like some of the companies who were able to grow the most are the ones that said, you know what? I don't know anything about the Hispanic market. I don't know the customer base. I don't know the knowledge, but I know there's plenty of people there who want to buy our goods and services. So rather than me going out there and trying to do it and making a dumb mistake, let me find the best person who does know the Hispanic or Latino culture for this particular market, who understands Mexico consumer buying habits, or maybe understand the psyche of people in Argentina and how that might be different. And I know I keep saying Argentina, but that was something that I was paying attention to this week. I was reading about Argentina. I got a buddy from college who got his MBA, and he spent his semester in Argentina teaching me a little bit about how different they are than other places in Mexico. So I'm not fond of Argentina or unfond of Argentina. I just happen to be talking about it today. But again, the smart leader is the one that hires for diversity with a global mindset and includes them in the conversation, have them lead the conversation. And why do you want to do that? Because that is what innovation is going to be all about. See, the best organization are ones that are innovators, that are progressive. And I use the word progressive not in a political sense, but think about the root word progress. The best leaders are the ones who always are trying to make progress. And if you want to make progress, then you're going to be a progressive. If you want to be progressive, then you want to be cutting edge. If you want to be cutting edge, that means you need to focus on innovation. And the global leader is the one that includes diverse people and help them or let them more specifically drive your company's innovation because they know stuff about those markets that you could never understand in a book. They know more about their culture and the community that you could never read about. And just because you go to the Lumpia Festival in the Philippines doesn't necessarily mean you understand the people of the Philippines. So you might need to hire somebody who does. Just traveled to a place for vacation doesn't mean you really understand the culture of the people there. And you should be willing to hire for diversity. Right now that these are the traits, the keys, if you will, of being an impactful global leader. Now, the last thing I'm going to tell you is this. The key to being a global leader of excellence and having these global leadership keys, this is number 7, is called grace. Now, when I mean grace, is having some grace for people who are different than you. Asking for grace when you do something that people don't like. Grace is being humble, being supportive, and recognizing that nobody is perfect. You won't be a perfect global leader, and the team you lead won't be perfect. So you always need to exercise and operationalize with grace. So I hope you get it. I hope you take this message for what it is and what it's worth. Again, let me give them to you all over again. You got to first have a global mindset. Number 2, you got to have some cultural intelligence. Number 3, you need to understand the cultural nuances between people. You really got to zero in on those nuances. Number 4, you got to master cross-cultural communication. Learn how to communicate across cultures. If you do that, then you will be great. Number 5, be flexible and adaptable. Number 6, hire for diversity and allow them to lead with innovation. And number 7, exercise and operationalize grace. So I hope these were helpful to you. I hope it gave you a framework that you can use how to become a better leader. I encourage everybody to travel. One of my mentors, and I call him a mentor, his name is Chuck D, the founder and lead singer of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame group Public Enemy. Chuck D told me one time back in 2014, the best education you can get in life is spending money and getting a passport and using the passport. That he's toured the world more than 120 times as a hip hop artist. He's been to so many different countries and he learned so much using these same 7 traits by spending time in those countries, learning from the people, learning the culture, gaining some intelligence, learning those nuances, learning how to communicate across cultures. But more importantly, knowing that there's some innovative people that have helped them to do some amazing things in business that weren't from the United States of America. And yes, being a Black man from Roosevelt, New York, he probably made some mistakes and he gave people plenty of grace. So I give you these same lessons that I learned from Chuck D, that I learned from my experience of traveling on 3 continents and more than a dozen countries. And I've been to 40 states in the United States and know that there's some massive cultural differences right in the United States. You know, the average American doesn't really leave their own state, and they definitely haven't been to 8 states, but I've been to 40 plus. Actually, if I'm real about it, I've been more than 40 states. But 40 states are the states that I've gone to speak in as a keynote speaker. Haven't been to North Dakota, South Dakota to speak, haven't been to Idaho to speak, haven't been to Montana to speak, so y'all get me up there. Haven't been to Maine to speak. So if y'all can help me to get to some of these places, I would. But I've been to a lot of other places, visited a lot of states, and I learned that these global perspectives that I bring to you today are ones that need to be operationalized in the United States as well as around the world. And so I hope you got some value out of it. If you like this video, please share it with someone, like and subscribe, follow me on this platform, but more importantly, keep tuning in as I give you this value. See y'all next Wednesday. Same bat time, same bat channel. I got to go catch my plane. Take care.